Well, if there was one name that has been synonymous with the Minnesota Vikings throughout their existence, it would be Jim Marshall.
Today, that legendary member of the Purple People Eaters passed away. Sports director Jim Rich joins us now. And Jim, even though he stopped playing years ago, so many Vikings fans, of course, still know him.
Yes, because that's where the franchise really developed. That's where the aura of the Vikings began, with those guys out in the cold and throwing defenders and people out of their way to get to the football. And for me back then, I mean, that's what made the Vikings the Vikings. They were bigger than life, and so was Jim Marshall. And really, Marshall was one of the anchors of, if not the greatest front four, they got to be right there in the National Football League. Jim Marshall, he was always there. From day one when the Vikings arrived in Minnesota, Jim Marshall was a part of this team, and he played in every single game for the next 19 seasons. He played in 270 straight games for the Vikings, and overall his Ironman streak was a then NFL record of 282 regular season games. He piled up 127 sacks, which is second most in Vikings history, next to his teammate Carl Eller, and his 29 fumble recoveries are tied for the most in NFL history. But as great as his stats were, that only tells a portion of his story. His fellow teammate Chuck Foreman told me this afternoon that Jim was the guy that made the Vikings the Vikings.
He was tough, he was stoic, he was smart, you know. If you had to go to battle, I mean, a Viking, you know, you think about Viking, you think the Viking worship, you think of the Vikings, you know, these big guys with these, you know, but he would have been a big black guy with a white beard, you know what I mean, that was leading the way. And you know you could follow him because at the end, you knew he would win. I mean, this is the kind of guy that he was unique.
Yeah, he was truly unique. I mean, Chuck said he remembers when Jim Marshall debuted, he was just 11 years old. When he got to the Vikings, Jim Marshall had been here 12 years. Marshall is just one of 11 players to play on all four of the Super Bowl teams. And he was the guy, and we talk about the streak of consecutive games, which was then an NFL record. Chuck told me this afternoon there was one time where he was in the hospital all week. An ambulance picked him up on Sunday morning, drove him to the stadium. He played the game. The ambulance was there afterwards to pick him up and bring him back to the hospital.
I didn't know that's where you were going with this story. I thought you were just going to say he played.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That shows you his dedication, though, and his love.
He was, and he was the guy that everybody looked to.
Yeah.
He made sure all his teammates did the right things. And you know, you look at that franchise and what we saw, 20 below, and they were there.
Yeah.
You know, and it made everybody in Minnesota proud of the Vikings because weather was never a factor. Weather was to our advantage, and those guys made it. Even though they weren't from here, they came to Minnesota, they're like, oh my God, it's freezing here, you know?
They figured it out.
They took it to heart, and as a result, that's why the state was so proud of that group.
It's like a real-life superhero.
Yeah,
you know,
that's what
really
they were. They were beyond real.
Yeah. What a legend, and so great to hear those stories. The ambulance story, that's just
incredible.
Classic. You would never see that today.
Yeah, and Chuck said if you had to go on a mountain expedition and the rate of survival would be like 10%, if we had Jim with us, it would be 100%, because he made sure everybody got through.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Really yeah. He'll be missed.
No doubt.
Thanks, Jim.